look who that is pulling in to the gas. If it isn't Alex Nunez, what are you doing here?
We do this every week, Gary. That's why I'm here.
Oh, that's right. This is the Gary and Alex show. You're Alex. I'm Gary Gastelou. This is the official podcast of American Cars and Racing.com. That's why we're here. Later in the show, we're going to be talking about American trucks, Ford totally revamping its upcoming lineup. Big changes there. Some models getting discontinued, others getting added. They're spending $19.5 billion to make this big change. Huge changes here in the US automotive industry. But first, I want to step back into the past of Ford trucks. 15 years to be exact, to 2010, when the Ford F-150 Raptor was launched. You remember that?
I do remember.
Game-changing truck, really the first factory high-performance off-roader. The lead engineer on that was a fellow named Jamal Hameedi, who you might know. And a couple of years later, he went on to something very different at Ford, where he was the lead engineer for the Ford GT supercar, another game changer for Ford. Alex, I got to ask you, imagine combining the Ford GT supercar and the Ford F-150 Raptor. That's a pretty crazy idea, right?
I think that is a solid idea for this day and age.
Sort of thing you might see in a Vision Gran Turismo car or maybe on a late night rant on a forum, but someone is actually going to be doing something like that. And that someone happens to be Jamal Hameedi himself, who joins us now to talk about his new automaker, Hameedi Venturo. Jamal, it's good to see you.
Hey Gary. Hey Alex. How are you guys?
So you're getting into the supercar business yourself, super truck business, super something business. I'm not really sure. Give us the elevator pitch for this project you got happening.
Well, it's basically it starts out with I've been doing these modifications of off-road trucks for a while now, and also done ground up supercars. Some of our partners have done hypercars like the LaFerrari and the Aston Martin Valhalla. So basically, the idea is hypercars have become very, very limited in scope. They're becoming so powerful with so much downforce that really to start to explore their dynamic envelope, you have to go to a track. And not just any track, you have to go to a Formula One grade track with lots of runoff and lots of corners. And you can only drive them when the weather's good, and then you need a very special driver in order to drive them. So the whole window is getting tinier and tinier and tinier and tinier. And so what we thought is, why, with technology today, it doesn't have to be like this. And why don't we combine some of the aspects of an all-terrain capability car with the connectedness and engagement of a hypercar? And that's what we're setting out to do.
And who are your partners in this venture?
My co-founder is Dr. Andreas Benziger. And Andreas has he's lives in Switzerland, and he has a long history of selling hypercars. He was involved in the early days of the Aston Martin Valkyrie, working with Adrian Newey. And so he is basically a hypercar customer. He is kind of our in-house marketing research study, if you will, because in his circle, people are getting very tired of hypercars that you can't use, and they're more or less not all the same, but they're all in the same genre. And so you'll be very successful if you have a very established brand that can drive resale values with that brand. But as a new entrant, it's tough to break into that realm.
And no surprise that you see these on the auction block with 10, 20, 30 miles on them getting traded hands, and people actually have never even driven them at all.
Yeah, I mean that's quite common. And our goal is to, this sounds cliche, but I'll say it anyway. We are not making a collector car. We are making a car that you cannot stop driving.
Should note, I recently tested the Land Rover Defender 110 Octa. Between Ford and now, you were over at Jaguar Land Rover heading up their special vehicle operations division that developed that vehicle. It's basically a Raptor on steroids, but also has some on-track supercar capabilities. You've got the hydraulic anti-roll bar system, kind of like what McLaren uses in their supercars. It is, I called it an all-terrain vehicle, dirt to pavement, and it pretty much could do it all. And even though it's not an American car, which is what we specialize in here, the fact that I traced it back to you and the original Ford F-150 Raptor, we gave it honorary American Cars and Racing citizenship. But we've got the video of that on our YouTube channel and on American Cars and Racing.com. But that was, as you were saying, a modified existing vehicle. You took the Defender and you turned it into this amazing high performance machine. But what you're doing now is building something 100% from the ground up.
Yeah, and there's some clues in the Octa that you can kind of extrapolate into our future project. And really, I think where an Octa changed the game on all-terrain vehicles is it wasn't a dedicated off-road vehicle. It was an all-terrain, meaning the car is still fun to drive on road. And like with all cars where you take an existing car and modify it, you are definitely boxed in what you can do and the technology you can deploy and the designs you can deploy. So this time we're taking all those constraints away and doing everything from first principles, clean sheet.
So we've seen a couple of off-road supercars the last couple of years, the Huracan Storado, the 911 Dakar, but those were modified versions of those production cars. Tell me how yours goes to the next level from that.
One of the things that we don't want to do, and we will not be doing, is we don't want to just take a hypercar, put a little bit of ride height into it, put an off-road, all-terrain kind of tire in it and retune it. That's interesting, but we think there's a whole lot more out there and a lot more compelling product out there. Because, the interesting thing here is the second you raise the ride height, you are compromising your connected feel in a sporty character on road. We've seen, like back in my Focus days, and the Focus had a very high H point for the driver, 15 millimeters of changing where the driver's position is, has a massive impact on how sporty that car feels. One of the things that Porsche does they do an excellent job of is putting the driver low in the vehicle. Creating capability from a ride height change is a compromise. We don't want to do compromise.
You haven't revealed any images of what this might look like yet, but can you draw us a word picture of what we can expect?
This is another thing. We are breaking a lot of convention and the way things are done and the way cars and the story behind a car is told. So we don't want to, we're doing the design and the engineering concurrently. We believe that there's a better way to tell the story of a car than introducing and showing the outside of it first. We believe in building the story of the car from the inside out. You eventually do get to the beautiful aesthetic of the car, but what we're trying to achieve is when you see that aesthetic, it will be built on a foundation of technology that is already quite innovative, and you can see how the aesthetic matches the technology. And it's much more impactful, and it's a deeper connection to the car if we do it that way.
You see it as this where all the visual elements for the aesthetic, be it from the interior design to the exterior styling, this is something that is truly complementary to what the engineering capabilities are. Like you said, to use your words, to building the aesthetic around the engineering.
I wouldn't call it complementary, and it's not like we're developing kind of a rolling chassis and then putting a skin over it. We believe you cannot separate form and function. The two live hand in hand. And, what I've learned in 30 years, over 30 years of doing this, is the second you start putting one of those above the other or doing one first after the other is when you don't create a truly lasting piece. This is more than cars too. The really lasting products that are iconic, they have this unbelievable connection between form and function. And the function is driven by the form and the form is driven by the function. And it's not separable. It's not complementary. It's, you see a form, there's a function that goes along with it. And that's where the beauty comes from. That's our philosophy and how and why we want to tell the story and the way that we're going to tell the story.
I assume this is not going to be an electric vehicle.
There will be internal combustion engine on board.
And you're calling it a hypercar. Is that $500,000, millions of dollars? What sort of price range are you looking at?
It's an ambitious project in that we're doing everything from scratch. And so it's very expensive. And so that we didn't set out to do a hypercar, but where we've ended up, given the amount of engineering and technology that we're going to deliver in this, we are in the millions price point.
And the company, you're basing it in Italy in the Motor Valley, is that correct?
We are. We are going to be based out of Emilia-Romagna in Italy, basically the Motor Valley.
What's it like starting a new car company from scratch? And I think it's a little easier in Europe. I know we've got the tougher regulations here, but really, what kind of challenge is that?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, it's, every 10-year-old's dream to basically create a car from scratch on your own. But there are, that's where my partner Andreas is really great, because I come from the corporate world. He comes from a very entrepreneurial world, and starting a company from scratch on your own, you basically have to do everything. You don't have teams to do anything. And you don't have to go to meetings. You don't have to have meetings. You have to get stuff done though. And you have to do it nonstop. And so it's a completely different way of working. I love it. We've always, even though the divisions that I've worked in, whether it's Ford Performance or SVO at JLR, we've always professed an entrepreneurial spirit in those groups where we had small teams, flat management, get things done, race day, motorsport mindset. That was kind of always our mantra. And it's amazing to be able to kind of live that out now in this project.
Is this something you're going to be able to make street legal for the US? I know that can be kind of tricky for these boutique vehicles.
Yeah, no, it will absolutely be legal, FMVSS compliant, Europe EC compliant, United States compliant, Middle East compliant.
When will we start getting a peek at it? And what's your projection for when it goes on sale?
We'll start telling our story. I mean, we have already started telling the story with the first press release, and next month we will announce some partners, some strategic partners that will be working with us, and then we'll start telling that story of creating this car and what it takes and the polarities that we need to break on the way to deliver the end product. But our target is to start deliveries in 2029.
Is this something you might go racing with, send it to Dakar or that sort of thing? Or is this purely a fun vehicle?
We've talked about that. It's not going to be a hardcore motorsports experience. So it will be a very comfortable car. It will be a very luxurious car. That's not to say, I'm pretty sure based on what we're going to do, it would be more than competitive with a Dakar T1 Plus vehicle.
Alex, you live in Connecticut where there's an interesting confluence of expensive sports cars and classic cars, but also a lot of snow, a lot of winter driving. Do you see a big market for this sort of thing up with the crowd you're familiar with up there?
Well, so there's a huge collector car community where, super high-end, exotics and limited run stuff that if you go to shows in the spring and summer here, you're going to see them. And I think that a car like this is attractive to that audience that first of all, they're the target customer, that high net worth, ultra high net worth customer that is going to be able to look at a car like this and take it into consideration. But getting to Jamal's original point, the fact that this is being designed to be driven all the time, that I think changes the calculus for a lot of people because it's not, you can go buy, a McLaren 720 or an Aventador or whatever, and it's not great as a sort of daily driver. But this sounds like the sort of thing where, sure, some people are going to buy this car and put it in the garage and they're going to baby it. But if it's as enjoyable and willing to be used all the time, it could be the sort of exception to the rule, where it's like, once upon a time you might see somebody driving a Bugatti, in Greenwich or something like this. Whereas this is something that could be someone's routinely used vehicle in those communities where you're going to find the customer for it. So long story long, yeah, I think the audience for something like this is there because I think the usability is something that's really nobody has approached a car in this sort of strata with that in mind so far. So I think that that's going to resonate a lot.
And I assume, Jamal, you're pretty confident that market exists.
Well, we're going to find out, aren't we? I mean, and that's the crazy thing to me is with all these beautiful cars that amazing companies around the world make, they all get parked when the temperature drops and you can't run summer tires anymore. A handful of them, you can put winter tires on. But, most people, they go into their big, heavy SUVs for the winter and long for spring when they can get the really good stuff out of the garage again. What if that wasn't the case? What if the most fun, most durable, most robust car in the garage was your hypercar?
How much customer interest have you gotten preliminarily, since the announcement? Because I know this is a community and your partners are sort of entrenched in there. I'm sure that you've already started getting feelers from prospective customers.
This is a red flag for me internally that everyone we've talked to about this thinks it's a great idea. And usually, having done this, like if I go back to my Raptor days, everyone thought it was a horrible idea. They couldn't picture, why would you do this? And a lot of, all the great innovation stories, most people question because they can't get their head around it. In this case, everyone kind of starts nodding their head, saying, yeah, I can see that. There's a missing spot for something like that.
Jamal, before we let you go, I do want to bring it back to Ford because your friends over there have said they're working on a Ford Raptor supercar type vehicle, sort of inspired by their Dakar T1. Are you worried at all about the competition from Ford in this space? It sounds like you're on the right track.
Well, I think we'll be at very different volume and price points.
Not an issue for Hameedi Venturo.
For one thing, we have talked about this internally and also other car companies doing stuff in this area too. And it builds credibility to this new segment that we're all working on, like high-end, high-performance adventure vehicles.
Well, we can't wait to see it, hear more about it. Jamal, it's been great catching up with you. Best of luck. I mean, this is, as you said, the dream job for a car engineer, for a car fanatic, and you got to just be loving it.
It's amazing. It's going to be a fun ride.
I can never afford something like that, Alex, but even amongst regular sports, because I don't even like test driving sports cars anymore. They're too fast, too powerful. I don't have a track to go to. I much prefer the off-roady, rugged stuff that I can go find a dirt road with and have a little fun. Plus, they are better every day, and they're better than the regular street performance cars, even the SUVs. I'd rather drive one of the off-roady ones here in New York where the roads are terrible.
It's funny because, a lot of people, you might roll your eyes when you hear, oh my God, it's going to be pricing millions. But the reality is the audience is there for that. Just because, it seems so unimaginable, to like regular people, for lack of a better term, doesn't mean that the audience isn't there. And this is such an interesting project because everybody has a ton of really pertinent experience here. Jamal is behind some of the best, like, sort of all-terrain high performance vehicles ever. Like he was saying, partners come from the hypercar side. So frankly, I'm dying to see what this looks like, what it presents itself as. Is it going to be like a long travel, like sort of swoopy GT, or is it going to be more, for lack of a better term, truckish in, the silhouette?
Remember the Local Motors Rally Fighter? Remember that? Imagine
I
that, but as a hypercar, maybe.
Yeah, and I will go to the grave saying that thing was awesome. Again, really cool ideas out of left field, and Jamal made a point. People thought that the Raptor was crazy. Now you see Raptors are everywhere. Like you see them, and people love them as daily drivers because of how they're suspended and everything. And this gets to the argument also that you just said. When I saw the 911 Dakar and the Huracan Storado come out, it's like that's the best 911 and that's the best Huracan simply because you can use them and if not worry and have no worries, but worry so much less about stuff that the rest of us who drive like normally suspended cars don't have to worry about. So I think that this is a smart idea and it's a space that will. I have a feeling you could see this becoming potentially a catalyst for, others that want to sort of jump into that space.
You mentioned the Ford Raptor again. Ford literally can't sell enough of those because of the CAFE regulations. That was the case. They had to restrict their output, but now that the CAFE regulations have been loosened, I imagine they're going to be building a lot more of those. Big change at Ford this week. They killed the Ford F-150 Lightning electric pickup, will eventually replace it with an extended range electric pickup that's got a gas motor on board for extended driving. No details on that yet. They've also killed their next generation electric full-size truck, and they're going to be coming out with a new line of trucks that they haven't said anything about where it's going to fit in the lineup. That's going to be built in Tennessee instead of that truck. Really looks like the electric truck segment has dissolved almost completely at this point. General Motors is still holding out with Factory Zero, but they canceled the second factory. Without the government backing, this segment's just not going to happen the way people had hoped or spent a lot of money to do it. Ford's taking a $19.5 billion write down on all this, although it is going to continue with that new $30,000 electric pickup, which is going to spawn a line of low cost electric vehicles, hopefully, that are going to be built in Kentucky.
Totally agree. Listen, we're going to find out what the real market is for these vehicles, and the OEMs will adjust accordingly. And I'm guessing this is going to it's going to cause a lot of pain in the near term. I mean, Ford's writing down however many billion, as part of these changes. But the reality is, everyone's going to get to a place where they're selling vehicles that people want to buy. That's what automakers want to sell to people. So instead of something that is artificially propped up by subsidies and other things, we're going to see them build more of the existing trucks that people want, and develop new things that are electrified that take advantage of a lot of this research and development money that they've sunk into the EVs, like the EREVs that you're going to see from Ford and Ram. And I think everyone's going to still try to find that sort of secret sauce in terms of where the intersection of desirability and affordability, like Ford is doing with this Skunkworks small EV truck that they're developing.
Well, interestingly, those new gas-powered trucks that they're going to be building in Tennessee are coming in 2029. just like Jamal's supercar. I hope by then you and I are both in a position where we're in the market for that supercar as opposed to a new pickup truck.
Well, I will continue to buy that Powerball ticket and cut you in, Gary.
It's a smart investment. There's no doubt about that. I won $4 in the Powerball last week, the $1.25 billion Powerball. I got the Powerball. That's all I got.
Absolute bonanza. Free coffee.
No, I'm a smart investor. I'll reinvest the
Oh,
money
that's
in
right.
another Powerball ticket. That's how you do that. That's how you buy supercars. Anyway, thanks again to Jamal Hameedi. Really can't wait to see what this thing looks like. And we will be bringing you that news because, again, even though it's being made in Italy, we've granted him honorary citizenship to cover Hameedi Venturo. Alex, see you next week. Big show next week. Not going to tell everybody what we got going on, but we got some exciting stuff coming on the show next week for Christmas.
It could set a new standard.
It's possible. We'll see. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time. The Gas is a production of A Car Media and American Cars and Racing.com.